Sex Talk with the Siegel Brothers is a weekly program designed to answer all your questions, including the ones you didn't even know you had, and to clarify the endless debates around the wonderful and fascinating world of sexuality. Join us for real talk about sex from two experts in the field. Richard and Larry Siegel have over 50 years of experience as sex therapists, educators, counselors, and researchers. The Siegel brothers are recognized around the world as trainers of medical and mental health professionals.
Hello and welcome to Sex Talk with the Siegel Brothers. I'm Larry Siegel, a clinical sexologist and certified sexuality educator.
And I'm Dr. Ricky Siegel, a certified sex therapist and supervisor.
I'm proud to say my brother.
Proud of that rolled vest.
Indeed. And
cheers
a toast,
to you,
our
my
traditional
brother.
sake toast to you and to all of you. Thank you for joining us. And that is how we like to kick off our Friday night with Sex Talk. And again...
Sex Talk and Sake.
Sex Talk and Sake, absolutely. And a little change of paraphrasing, something that you do like to say. Every night should be Sex Talk and Sake.
Well, I don't know about that part. But sure, right? Everybody should talk about sex all the time. There's no shortage of important topics for couples, for families, for parents, for kids, for seniors, for politicians, for teachers, right?
Pets.
Well,
right? You know, I mean, again,
it's not
this really is the one
to what the cat is doing right now.
Well, but okay, that aside, we'll try not to look at that. But again, I mean, you want to talk about something that is universal to virtually every life form,
right?
Yet we can't acknowledge the reality. We can't seem to get to that point where we say, "Oh, yeah, this is something normal. This is something that is a part of life."
Right. For every human being, nobody can opt out. And this show came about kind of accidentally, right? The opportunity arose and realized it was kind of an interesting little shtick to have two middle-aged dudes. Since one of the problems with the subject of sexual and reproductive health is that people hear that phrase and tend to think that it only applies to women. Right? So people get images of Planned Parenthood, and I mean, we used to see this for years, like at the clinic when we worked at Planned Parenthood. Wives and girlfriends would be in the clinic attending to their business, and husbands and boyfriends would be sitting outside. 98 degrees outside. They're sitting in the car
sitting in the
cigarettes.
car. Right.
Now, I don't need to go in there.
Right.
There might be a uterus on the wall or something, and they just like they can't even sit in the waiting room.
Right.
There was an aversion to the whole subject.
Well, and you know, this is something that we're going to talk about.
China, right? China, cheers to you if you're listening. China Beck, one of the best nurse practitioners ever. She used to tell women, your boyfriend's here, bring his ass in. Get him back here, right?
Yeah,
that's
absolutely. Right? You know, and again, there's a larger umbrella of a topic for all of this too. And you know, we're going to talk about this separately. We have to. This is what's happening around us. And, you know, people talk about systemic racism, but nobody's talking enough about systemic sexism. And you want to talk about going all the way back to the beginning of civilization. This is something that has really defined so many cultures, so many societies. And I think what you're talking about is just another reflection of that. When we talk about violence against women, when we talk about men holding women responsible for their own insecurities, we're still really talking about the same kind of thing as guys being afraid to go into a family planning clinic, as well as fathers and males in general afraid to talk about their daughter's development, acknowledging their daughter's
pretending
bodies.
It's not happening.
That's right.
Or jumping in the back seat and going, periods, that's mom's department.
That's right. I can't talk about that. So there has been this split for a very long
time. Ironic, right? That men who usually live with women who menstruate can't talk to their daughters about their menstruation.
And can't even talk about their bodies.
Yeah, it's kind of
so it's
kind of messed up.
It's very messed up. It really is. And you know, welcome to why we have a job.
Yeah.
It really is kind of crazy, and hopefully we can get a little bit more sanity, because if we don't, we're going to continue having all the problems that we do have. Again, the most life-affirming, the most pleasure-inducing behaviors, acts, part of ourselves is also the source of so much pain and shame for so many people.
Right. Because physiologically, evolutionarily, we're all wired as such, right? But we've also developed since the beginning of civilization with all of these attempts at governance or control.
Well,
And nothing controls people better than fear. And few things work better to make people frightened than their own sexuality.
well, let's take that a step further. What's frightening for so many people is pleasure. That's really the frightening part.
Right.
Going back to those, biblical proscriptions, right? Isn't really the root of all these fears that people have been taught since literally day one of their lives. It's all about being tempted by things that make you feel good. Right? Is that not the root of just about everything that we are constantly dealing with as problems, especially sexuality? Right? It feels good. If this didn't feel good, I don't think we would be here. Right? If sex wasn't pleasurable, if it was only a reproductive kind of function, I don't think we would be having any of these conversations. We wouldn't have any of these problems.
Right? I'm trying to remember who theorized that women's orgasm was only, an attempt at a benefit so that they would endure childbirth.
Right.
Otherwise, they'd be like, forget it.
Right.
And you do it.
Yeah, and for many, many years, even professionals have believed that a woman's orgasm is, again, just a biological bonus. Because when we look at the functions involved in just sexual behavior, people tend to think that all roads must lead to reproduction. So if it doesn't have reproductive value, then, it doesn't really count.
Right.
Yet pleasure is a biologically wired phenomenon. And we'll talk about this in the future as well. A woman's orgasm actually does play a role in reproduction.
Yeah. There's a lot of interesting ideas about that, but it certainly leaves a huge opening for discomfort on the subject of clitorises,
Yes.
which we like to talk about a lot because,
Absolutely.
again, the level of ignorance among men and women who have
And
them,
women.
presumably.
Yes.
Let's drink a toast to clitorises.
Yes.
And
We're all
being-
for clitorises.
To quote our recent guest, Laurie Mintz, here's to being more clitorate.
Indeed. Yes, we all can use a little bit more clitoracy.
That's a fun word.
It really is. It is a great word. So I am actually excited about this week's show. We're going to do something a little bit different.
Talk about sex therapy.
Indeed. Indeed. We're going to talk about, but we're going to do it in a slightly different way. Right? Than we've normally done it. And I think we're going to do it in a way that's different than anybody else has ever done it before. Right? Not only are we going to have two of our favorite returning people, right?
My favorite people in my life.
Indeed.
Two of our favorite sex therapists.
Yes, indeed. Dr. Joe Kort and Dr. Rachel Needle. But we're also going to be doing this in a transmogrification.
That's right, because I'm annoyed because we're setting this up to talk to them about sex therapy, and I find out that they're in North Carolina having a good old time, partying it up. And they did this once before, and I swore I wasn't going to be left out this time. So I'm going.
I think before we waste any more time, get up there before it's too late.
You get on the Zoom call with them.
All right. I'm going to call. I'll distract them.
I'm going to North Carolina.
All right. Have fun. Be safe. Delighted to welcome our guests for this week, our returning champions, the absolutely wonderful Dr. Rachel Needle and the also absolutely wonderful Dr. Joe Kort, who we are talking to up in North Carolina. How are you all doing?
We're doing great. It's fun here. You like
Good,
it?
good. So I'm jealous, right? I don't know where my partner in crime ran to. Again, I'm glad I have the opportunity to talk to you all, especially while you're up on your little retreat. How's it going up there?
You're gonna do it solo?
Yeah. I figured I'll do it.
Oh, wow.
Excuse me. Where'd you come from? All right. Boy, 1 minute
just
I'm
ran
here
up from-
talking to you and you just sort of take off. And the next minute you're up in North Carolina. Wow.
They
Tell
call
us
it
about
speeding.
magic.
My heart for killing me. This is great. How you doing?
Good.
You
Great.
guys
Great.
have all the fun up here again without me.
Yeah, well, that's kind of how sometimes it goes. Right? I'm still down here
Next
in
time
Florida.
you'll join.
Yes, Larry, you're coming next time.
Yes. Oh, I would love to. I would love to. Well, this is really a special treat. We don't often get such a concentration of expertise and experience in one shot there. So I'm really, really psyched about that. Let's pick your brains. Let's talk about some things are related to sex therapy.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Since we have 3 of the country's, if not the world's, premier sex therapists with us today.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right.
All right. So sort of for people who, again, are not necessarily familiar with it, I know for a lot of people, sex therapy is just kind of a thing that they hear about. And a lot of people know it, but they don't know what it is.
And
So
a lot of people
start
still
with
have, a lot of people still have strange ideas, like we have big beds in our office, or we follow people home and
Or
stand,
touch.
stand at the foot of their beds. Right. Or
Right.
they think that there's
Or-
touch or sex going on.
Mhm.
They confuse sex surrogacy with sex therapy. I think
absolutely. For that proverbial, I wish I had a nickel every time. If I had a nickel every time somebody said, "Oh, you're a sex therapist? You have sex with your patients?" I said, no.
it's still psychotherapy. It's still talk therapy. And that's something that, it's like I'm having to tell people over and over again. And a lot of people say, well, what is sex therapy? Well, sex therapy is a lot of different things, right? It's not just behavior. It's not just function, dysfunction, gender, sexual orientation, couples and relationship issues. I mean, a whole continuum of things fall under that umbrella.
And that's such a great point. And again, I think that's something that for so many people hearing that right now, especially for the first time, would kind of go on to do a double take. What do you mean? Sex therapy is not just for sexual problems? Right? So what are the kinds of things that you all see in therapy?
Well, I mean, starting most general, psychotherapists, what most people expect from talk therapy, is the same as what sex therapists do, except there's sexual content.
Right, and we're talking about, infidelity sometimes, people who feel out of control, people who have incredible shame, childhood sexual abuse, traumas, sexual negative messages, religious abuse, and spiritual abuse around messages that were misguided.
And then, we will go back to, we do also talk about function dysfunction, right? People that come in and are having desire discrepancy, right? In relationships where one or two want it more than the other. We also talk about, people that have trouble with orgasm or desire, sexual pain. So we also do those things. People that are struggling with their gender identity or their sexual orientation. So again, there are so many different things that people come into our office with. And rarely is it like one thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
We find usually that one thing might be the identified problem that brings them and gets them into our office, but rarely is that all that's there.
Right. It's kind of like a grand jury. Right? You bring them in with one thing, but then you kind of see all that other stuff that's really there. Right. So that's
we talk about often that sex problems usually occur within the context of a relationship. A lot.
Whoop, frozen up there.
Slide patterns, people often slide into the same kind of patterns of familiarity.
Oh,
Couples avoid that.
Indeed. So unfortunately, we're having some technical issues here. I guess you're up in the mountains, so kind of getting a little freeze going. Could you maybe repeat that last point?
Just that, well, people in long-term relationships, I guess to put it simply, fall out of love and lose that spark and get bored of the routine. So a lot of what sex therapists do is helping couples to renew their relationships and get back in touch with why they got together in the first place.
So why does that happen? That seems to be so common, I think, almost to the point where for so many people, they accept this as normal, that after you're together for a while, that spark is gone. What's happening in a relationship? Don't they still love each other? Don't they still want to be together?
So many do, right? No, right? You grow and sometimes you grow apart. And, you know, I'm a big believer in you can choose to love and choose to be with and make a good relationship, but not everybody wants to do that. And that's okay. You don't have to stay with the same person or persons. So I think that sometimes it really is that there just is passion gone. And that can be for a number of different reasons. So certainly there are things, you know, this whole talk that I give about keep passion relationship, definitely things that you can do to help facilitate that, to make sure that, you know, some of that still stays there. But, you know, with relationship duration, that becomes more challenging. So, you know, and you might have to realize that sometimes that will wax and wane, whether you're in a relationship or not.
And people don't make time to talk about sex. And people think only if you're in an open relationship or consensual non-monogamy. And I always say you have to negotiate your monogamy. You have to renegotiate your monogamy. It shouldn't be on auto renewal.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a point that we talk about a lot, that people go into their relationships not with understandings and agreements, but with assumptions and expectations. Right? And how often do we find that we've sort of broken a rule, and that's the first time we found out there was even a rule?
Right. There's myths, very common myths that people grow up with, right? That one of them we hear all the time is that relationships take work, which, you know, nobody likes work. We like to say relationships take intention, right? But work, you know,
or conscious effort,
right? And the other thing is that if we really loved each other, it would be easy,
right?
And we have to attack that idea that love is certainly necessary, but not always sufficient for people to succeed in a relationship.
We also talk about how couples need to make appointments for intimacy, but I've been starting to call them reservations, right? You make reservations for
reservations with no reservations.
Yeah, I like that.
So that's great. Oh yeah, nice.
So clever.
But see, and I like that point too, because it seems like, I mean, how many centuries have we been sort of given that script that, number one, we're supposed to be together forever, and number two, all we need is love. As long as we love each other, nothing else matters, right? And I really want to write that book, that love is not enough. So how do we get people through those?
Sounds like a great dissertation topic, Larry.
It does.
Yeah, one of many that I have to figure out which one I'm going to actually focus on. Right? So how do we help people get more realistic about their expectations in their long-term relationships? I mean, is there something, like you said, Joe, it's not auto-renewed. So is there something that people should periodically, intentionally do something to renew their subscription?
Yes. Right.
Everybody's nodding here. Yes.
So I always tell, you know, people in relationships that, you know, they can choose how often, but, you know, minimum once a month, you should have a relationship check-in. And that check-in should be we have together. Is there anything we want, you know, talk about that we've been uncomfortable with, or we would like to see done differently? Just relationship check-ins. We do that with so many other things. How many times you sit with, like, if you work for a company, your boss, or like if you run your own company, how many meetings with our web people and social media people do we have? Like,
and we do
relationships
performance
affects it.
reviews.
Yes.
So we
right,
don't
right.
like that word performance, but we check in and see how we're doing, right? And everybody takes it as normal.
It seems, I think, though, for so many people, doesn't that seem threatening?
It does feel
Yeah.
threatening. Then people are because they're scared to talk about it. They don't know how to talk about it. They wonder where you're coming from. Why are you talking about this? It's not built into our culture. It's not built into our relationships.
And if we, because of that, right, we don't start out doing that, and then all of a sudden it's like, well, we're in this routine. We never did that to begin with. Are you okay with it? Are you okay with it? I'm not okay with it. So it's like you all have to be on the same page and willing to do that. And how much intention or conscious effort are you going to make to sustain this relationship? Because a lot of people don't find value in that, right? They don't realize that that's something that is important to, to their relationship.
Another myth I always like to bust, I've been busting this a lot lately. People think if they're about open relationships don't work because one always wants it and one doesn't. What I've been saying is that's relationship. That's couples. One wants to raise the kids one way, one doesn't. One wants to spend the money this way, one doesn't. One wants to live in this neighborhood, one doesn't. So then that's the conversation. But people have already prejudged open relationships. So they highlight that part of it when it's just a normal, natural couples issue.
Nice. I think even that concept, though, for a lot of people is kind of weird. So can you maybe just talk a little bit what that means? What is an open relationship?
It's so different for everyone, right? So it could be that both of you decide to be swingers, right? Where you involve other couples and other people. It might be that one of you has a kink or a fetish or some kind of thing that you want to act out, but outside the relationship. You could be polyamorous, where you have other people you're in relationship with, sexual or non-sexual. You can be a little bit open. People always ask, what does monogamous mean, Dan? I've had couples where they only open up on vacation. They only open on holidays. I don't know. It's like it's minimal. What do you guys think?
So the point is that you do what works for you in your relationship. You decide that together. That's part of the fun. Right. So we want to do this. And so what do we want this to mean for us? What am I comfortable with? What am I not comfortable with? What do I think would be hot and sexy and, turn us both on or me on? And what would turn you on?
And what would turn you off?
And what would turn you off?
Right.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Right.
People are terrified to talk about what turns them off.
Yeah.
For fear of rejection.
Yeah.
Or offending someone.
Right. Don't a lot of people also have that same fear in talking about what turns them on?
Right,
Yeah.
for fear of rejection.
Sure.
And then people, here's what I always tell couples. If you feel like, if you're telling your partner you're disgusting, it's usually because you feel disgusted. So I feel disgusted, so now I'm going to make you disgusting rather than own the fact that it's bringing up something negative for me.
I think a lot of people have a hard time with that, being able to identify what's bringing up. I'm trying to stay away from the word trigger these days because I feel like everyone's what is bringing up those emotions in them. Right. And what is leading to that, their feelings. And then we assume, or it's so much easier to put it on somebody else than to really go inside and figure out like, where is this coming from? Like, what's really going on here? Because that's hard work.
Yeah, it really is. And again, working with couples, it's so apparent that it's so much easier to blame the other person than to take responsibility, even for your own feelings. Kind of gets you off the hook, doesn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. So how do you help somebody navigate those kinds of issues?
Well, this is something else that we talk about a lot on the show, right? That on the one hand, it's good. It's a niche. It's a specialty. It's great for us, modern sex therapy institutes, but it's frustrating that all therapists aren't able to talk to couples. And I always love to say couples counselors that don't talk about sex are like plumbers that don't do toilets. They wouldn't tolerate that, but we're perfectly fine with marriage counselors, couples counselors that say, oh, we have to talk about your communication, and the sex, takes care of itself like magic?
Well, but then it goes back to, right? So for the therapists themselves, they're not comfortable. They're not knowledgeable. I mean, same thing with physicians. When I find gynecologists even, like, how do you not ask about sex? So we're not given the language, we're not taught. They have their own stuff coming up, right? Therapists don't do their own work around sexuality. How can we expect them to facilitate that in other people?
I have a friend who said, I asked him, do you talk about sex with your clients? Well, why would I, unless they bring it up? I'm like, oh, so you don't bring up family of origin, right? And they're like, well, of course I do. Well, how does that come up? You ask, right?
How did you get here?
Right.
Yeah, and it is that one area that so many therapists and even medical professionals, they just don't address. Right? It's sort of like it's sort of like, expecting everybody's walking around like sort of Ken and Barbie dolls, right? With those smooth crotches, nothing under there. Don't worry about it. If something appears, then maybe we'll talk about it if you bring it up, right? But we kind of like to just ignore it. Right?
We're talking about couples, but individuals too, right? I mean, people
Absolutely.
come in, am I masturbating too much? Am I dating right? Are hookups okay? Should I feel ashamed of this? They have issues as well.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people don't understand that. I think there is a tendency to equate sex therapy with couples therapy.
Yeah. Right. But people come in and they feel like, am I out of control? What does that look like? Is it sex addiction? Is it hypersexuality? Is it normal? Is it abnormal? Right.
Or also they come in saying, I'm having trouble having an orgasm, or, I don't want to, get in a relationship because I know X, Y, and Z is an issue.
Right.
So
Well, this is real common and a problem. A lot of individuals are in relationships, but they come in alone because they think it's their problem to fix, to save the relationship, instead of, like Bill Masters said, there is no sexual problem with an uninvolved partner. So either it's the partner saying, you go fix this and maybe I'll stay, or the person saying, it's on me, I have to fix it, or my partner will leave. And so we try and encourage people to bring their partners into therapy, and we're more likely to fix it if we treat it as a couples issue.
Yeah, that understanding partner, that willing partner is the most important, I think, therapeutic tool, right? But as we know, there are, like you just said, sometimes there is that dynamic that's set up where it's you have the problem, you go get fixed, and then I'll be here to see if I want to take you back. Now, how could that be successful?
Right.
It can't be, especially since so many, quote, dysfunctions are based on anxiety. Now you're going to pile on more anxiety because you feel like the relationship is do or die for an individual.
Even if it is their problem that started it, the solution involves the two of you.
Absolutely.
It has to.
Right, absolutely. And I find that's one of the hardest things to sort of get a partner to really see, especially if they have that sense of it. And I find out sometimes it's very difficult with some people to kind of explain the difference between blaming them for what's happening and pointing out where they have a responsibility to this dynamic. Right?
Yeah.
How do you sort of, broach that without blaming the victim, as it were?
One of the things we haven't talked about yet, especially for individuals coming in about sexual orientation, romantic orientation, relationship orientation, people are all over the place of wondering what's going on for them, if they have, and I always talk about the difference between sexual orientation and erotic orientation. Sexual orientation is to whom you're attracted, male, female, both, blend of both, multiple genders. Then you have your erotic orientation, the things that get you off, the things that bring you to orgasm, your fantasies, and they don't always align. And then that causes a lot of shame for people.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that whole concept, what you just said, is such a disconnect for so many people. Well, if you have the fantasy and you get off on the fantasy, doesn't that mean you want to do it? Right.
And doesn't that mean it's attached to your orientation? Doesn't that mean it's attached to what you really want to do? You're just going to do it at some point. Like people, our culture scares us, right? If you think it, then eventually you're going to do it. And that's not fair. And it's not always true. Yeah. It's mostly not true.
And that's why we're obsessed with porn and blaming porn for all of our problems, when it's never about the porn. It's that discussion that people don't want to have. It's masturbation, which most people are doing when they're looking at porn, and its fantasy does not equal reality. Those are the big issues.
And to combine those 2 points that you just made, how many people believe that if you are in a relationship and you are having a satisfying sexual relationship, then by default, there wouldn't be a need to masturbate?
It's all mystery.
Yeah, but you froze a little.
You
bit.
froze, so we just don't know the end.
But you were saying
okay.
people don't need to masturbate if they're in a relationship?
Yes.
Right.
Oh, right.
Right.
Mhm.
Yep.
Then I'm satisfying all your needs. You shouldn't need
Right.
anything else. I should be everything to you. And that's
Right.
mostly not true.
And I'll tell you, this might be a discussion for another night because I think it's a much longer one, right? But along those same lines, it's not just you wouldn't be masturbating. It's that, every once in a while, people having a, great sex life. If let's say, we wake up and we're in bed and maybe I'd want to be sexual, but, instead you go in the other room and you masturbate. And it's like, well, is that because you're not attracted to me? Is that because, no, sometimes it's just easier, right? It's like, then I'm finished and I walk away. Like as long as you still are in a satisfying and healthy sexual relationship with your partner or partners, and that you have to determine together what that means for, all of you, right? Then who cares? Even if you're in the house, it's not like only when I'm gone can you do this,
Well, I don't. Some people
That's
prefer
during
that because
COVID.
it's
We're
like
always
la, la,
here.
la. They don't have to see it. They don't have to hear it. They don't have to deal with it. Right. And then we also know that people get very upset if after having some great sex play session, then their partner goes to take a shower and they go in and they find them masturbating in the shower.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
Like, wait, what's that? Yes.
Right.
wasn't
I
enough.
wasn't enough.
Right.
It's very
Yes.
personal.
Right.
People are taught to take it very personally because we're not educated. We're sexually illiterate as a culture. We just are.
Like, were you satisfied? Were you satisfied? Then what's the problem?
Right.
We're
Right,
done.
exactly.
So,
I'm satisfying myself again.
right.
Right.
Yeah. And actually, I think isn't there a correlation where the more satisfying sex people have in their relationships, the more
you
they
want
tend to masturbate.
100%. The more they want, more you want it. And not always possible with a partner or partners.
Yeah. And even if you get it, it's not the same. And I think that's something that people often, I think, misguidedly get threatened by. Right. It's like they get really upset because, all right, fine, you shared your body, we shared our bodies with each other, but you know what? Now I want one with my hand. Right. And why is that a threat to you?
Or my vibrator or my finger.
Right.
Right. That's right. Exactly. And again, that whole thing, how many guys, especially if you're talking about heterosexual relationships, how many guys are really, really threatened by Bob? Right. That battery operated boyfriend.
No, I
Like,
never
who's
heard
Bob?
that. I know.
I'm like, it's right for Bob.
Straight to the drills.
We heard that in Jamaica.
Yeah, that was the first time.
I also heard it from an old Hungarian woman. Like, it couldn't have been further apart. They both talked about Bob. Yeah, but that's true. Guys are threatened. Like, this should be the only toy you need. But, Bob doesn't get soft or go to sleep or, right?
That's right.
Change the batteries once in a while.
The issue with gay men is that's usually not it's never an issue, but it's sort of understood that I'm not going to be everything, you're not going to be everything. But sometimes it can go to the point where I've had clients talk about this, where they have a hookup, and while they're having sex during the hookup, the guy's on his phone trying to hook up with the next guy during the sex act.
Wow.
So
That's
can,
insulting.
Right. Very, but it's like that some people do that because they have intimacy issues. They have issues about connecting with the person that they're with in the moment.
Right. So
before we run out of time, I want to say something also about folks who are thinking they might have a sexual issue that they'd like to discuss with a professional. And maybe they'll go on Psychology Today and look at profiles. It's important to look for a trained and certified sex therapist. Right? Anybody can check the box that says sex therapy if they took a class or if they just are interested. But you really want someone who has the competence and the expertise and the experience to be able to address sexual concerns.
And for any therapists that would like that expertise, we're the 3 co-directors of Modern Sex Therapy Institutes, and we have over 250 archived workshops. We have full certification trainings. We have Ph.D. in clinical sexology. Check out our website, modernsextherapyinstitutes.com, if you're interested in learning more and being trained, because most of us don't learn anything about sex and sexuality in graduate school, and it's essential. It is essential.
Right. Absolutely.
Trained in this. You're going to be left
Don't
behind.
get left behind.
Don't get left
Don't get
behind.
left
That's our motto.
But it just stands to reason. I don't care what kind of psychotherapist you are working with sexuality. You are working with sexual behavior. Right? And how can you not get trained? Right? It's just such a core aspect of our humanity.
I always say, like, I always say the person walking into your office, go through puberty, boom, working with sexual issues.
Yeah, right.
Also,
And,
Right.
same thing with sex ed and parents. If you have kids, you are a sexuality educator. Whether you do the job or not, if you fail in that job, it'll have consequences. But
I love that.
you can't deny that that's your job.
Yeah,
So, I don't
absolutely.
know if you can see in the reflection behind us, but the sun set over the Caroline Mountain.
So, wow.
time for you to go.
You can get back down there and
Good to
finish
see you, Ricky.
the show with you. Thanks, you guys.
Yeah,
Thanks for having us.
I miss you. It's such a pleasure. Thank you all so much for
Welcome.
Thanks,
doing
Larry.
it.
Good night to see you.
It's so great
Thanks
to
for
see you
having
all. You know, I always just love talking with you guys and being with you guys, and can't wait to see you again. Enjoy the rest of
Looking
your
forward
time
to it,
up
Larry.
there. Again, special thanks to Dr. Joe Kort, Dr. Rachel Needle, Modern Sex Therapy Institutes. Check it out. We'll put the information on the end of all of this. Thank you both so much. I love you both so much. And Ricky, once again, you've disappeared. We've been doing this all of our lives. So I'll talk to you whenever I get a chance
Thank
to
you,
see
Larry. Have
See
a great
you.
night.
Both of you. Thank you. Take care. All right. And I'm just so glad to have that opportunity. And I'm glad he was.
Okay.
Wow. Another. Wow. Excellent. Good job. Good job. Nice.
Glad I didn't miss out again.
Yes, indeed. Here, a toast.
TV.
And welcome back.
Thank you.
All right.
A little
I know-
schwitzy.
Yeah, it was a lot of ground to cover in such a short period of time. It's pretty impressive.
So clever.
And thank you all for joining us. We really appreciate it. And if you would, please hit that subscribe button, the notification button. Please leave some comments. We would really love to hear from you.
We'd love to hear from you.
And those of you who are also following us on Facebook, please hit that like and share as often as you can. Help us grow. So,
We'll be back next Friday and every Friday for more Sex Talk with the Siegel Brothers.
indeed. And again, nice job. Thank you.
Thank
And
you.
Thank you. Stay well.
Thanks, Joe and Rachel.
Thanks for watching Sex Talk with the Siegel Brothers. Join us each week on Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern. You can also follow us on Facebook and subscribe to our YouTube channel to stay on top of the latest developments in the ever-changing world of sex and sexuality.